interesting point on the sort of Norse mythology side of it. Apparently, a nickname of, I don't know how many people watch Vikings and stuff like that, and so the other one that's on Netflix called The Last Kingdom. Obviously Odin is their like god of gods type thing, and he goes by loads of different nicknames. One of which is One Eye, and he apparently, and what happens in all those TV shows is like different people are said to be representations of him, and so one of the things you could draw from it is that apparently he is meant to be a representation of Odin, therefore coming in, doing what he's meant to do, and then dying, and that's why he can be seen to be accepting his death, because he was done. You see what I mean? I thought that was just an interesting.
No, that's cool and all, but the film didn't make me care about that. All of that stuff. Like, none of that was inside of the film, so you can kind of layer up the interest of a film by bringing in all this kind of like outside information, but it wasn't contained in the film. It wasn't even like alluded to necessarily. And I heard the name One Eye, and I just thought that was the first time I thought this is really on the nose, like even to the extent that they had to have the kid kind of make a joke out of it. But I kind of the one area, maybe it's just me as an audience member, but like if you say that it doesn't satisfy all audiences, James, but if you watch the film just as someone who wants to kind of as a kind of dramatic mood piece, I think it works. But perhaps you need a narrative to stand that mood piece up if it's going to run for longer than like half an hour.
Yeah, I could imagine it as a 40-minute short film, as it would be quite a success actually.
But the fact that it was just seeming to have an identity crisis like throughout was distracting from it working in that sense.
But does that mean it didn't really care? Maybe in that way, like it doesn't care that is the point. Is that it sort of does come across that way because the writers and the director don't actually care that it would look that way. So it's art after all. Like, does it have to appeal to a wide audience? Probably not.
No. He made it for himself, I think.
Yeah, but then again, is it self-important and self-indulgent in that way? Is it just very self-important? What do you think? Because
I think most of his films are that way. He makes them for himself rather than like a grander audience.
Yeah.
What do you think works about Drive that doesn't work in this? Considering Drive was only made like 2 years later.
It's a greater narrative, I suppose, as an entire story, perhaps. More engaging lead character. You actually know who Ryan Gosling's character is. I think there's many more elite factors in that.
I watched Drive a long time ago, but one thing that sticks with me that I can remember the most about it is the lingering cinematography. Just when that other director would say cut and move on to the next shot, it doesn't, and it would stay with the character or the scene just for that few seconds extra, and you're left thinking, oh, actually that's really interesting, and you start looking at the nuances in a scene when otherwise you would just expect to move on to the next one. And I think that was really, really similar in this. And I wonder if in a few years' time, if I was to think, right, what am I going to remember about this film? It's not going to be it's certainly not going to be the plot. It's going to be those lingering shots, I think, and just certain scenes which were really, really good looking.
It's the soundtrack from Drive, to be honest. It sits with me the most, actually, more than anything else.
Yeah.
But it appeals to a different audience, doesn't it? It appeals to a different audience, and you get a soundtrack like that, and suddenly you lure in so many different viewers, many different audience members. Any other thoughts before we round this off? Then
let's rate it.
Yeah, let's rate it.
Yeah, happy to rate it. All right, who would like to go first? Who chose it? Jem, you chose it, so you go first.
I will give it a 6.8. So I applaud it for being very different. It was interesting in that regard. It wasn't just the stereotypic Viking trope type thing. And I think as we discussed, there's lots lots of positives. If it could have just tightened up the negatives, i.e. the plot and the dialogue a bit more, it could have been something a lot more memorable and recommendable in that regard. I'm not sure with how it was. I'm not sure I'd recommend it unless someone was after something very different. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with what you say. I don't think the narrative was strong enough at all, or it was portrayed the way that maybe it would appeal to a wider audience in that way. For me, I'm going to give it a 6.2. I didn't think it particularly held itself together amazingly well. I thought it was really inventive cinematography. There were moments in it that I thought were really exciting, but yeah, when you don't have a lead character that you can really sort of attach yourself to and have carry you through, I think it can lead to some really major holes in many different factors. So for me, it's a 6.2, but yeah, that's probably about it. Just I really like the cinematography, and there are little bits and bobs in terms of themes and messages in there, but not enough to pull me through any higher. James?
Yeah, I agree with. I'll give it 6.8, same as Jem. I thought there was parts of it I really liked, and I think if his intention was for it to be a little bit ambiguous and for it to make you think and for it to stick in your head, it's done that for me. It's stuck in my head, but it wasn't enough layers to any of the characters. It didn't make me feel anything for any of them to be lost throughout the film enough for me to want to rewatch it. And I say if I want to rewatch it and enjoy it that much, I'd give it over a 7. It doesn't get into that.
So you'd still give it a 6.8?
Yeah.
With what you've said? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Tom?
I'd give it a lower score than everyone so far. I'd give it a 5.5. I don't think any of us will remember it particularly. We're saying we will now because we're reviewing it, but there's better Vikings films out there. Kirk Douglas, The Vikings. There's better heavily stylized films out there. We've said 300 Sin City. There's better films with similar cinematography. The Revenant we've touched on. Yeah, I just think it wasn't memorable for me. I didn't like the way it was edited and put together. I thought a lot of the cuts were harsh between various shots, and yeah, I thought that the style of it just lost itself personally.
Okay, and Liam?
Yeah, 6.8 as well. It works well as an atmospheric mood piece, and I enjoyed being inside, or I enjoyed the atmosphere that was fairly consistent throughout the film. It was heavy without being kind of like, fatigue inducing. So yeah, 6.8. Probably won't remember it for very long after this review, to be fair. But it did have Mads Mikkelsen yet again with a dodgy eye. I see there's like 4 films that he's been in where like his eye is completely
Yeah.
So
Casino Royale, isn't he?
Yeah.
Are you sure he doesn't just have a dodgy eye?
He just has conjunctivitis. Yeah.
He might have a dodgy eye.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, Mads Mikkelsen, Nicolas Winding Refn. We're going to give Valhalla Rising 6.4 overall. Don't come after us. Fair enough. I think a fair reflection.